Mixed martial arts is a dangerous sport by nature. Fighters step into the cage knowing the risks, accepting that injuries are part of the game. But sometimes life ends far too soon. Not from fights, but from illness, accidents, and circumstances that no amount of training can prepare you for. These are the stories of MMA fighters whose lives were cut tragically short.
In the fights tonight, we would like to honor a fallen fighter, former UFC and Fight Time Promotions mixed martial artist Corey Hill, who last fought in this cage in February, passed away a few weeks ago after a short illness.
Anthony "Rumble" Johnson. Anthony Johnson was an absolute beast inside the octagon.
It's all over!
With a 23-6 record in mixed martial arts and 17 knockout victories, Rumble was one of the most feared strikers in the sport.
That right hurt him.
He spent 8 years with the UFC across 2 separate stints, compiling a 12-5 record and challenging twice for the light heavyweight title. Johnson's power was legendary. Opponents described getting hit by him as unlike anything they'd experienced, not just hard, but devastatingly fast.
He hit me so hard, and I was like, man, not only does this guy hit hard, he's very fast.
That combination made him one of the most dangerous fighters in any division he competed in. After losing to Daniel Cormier in 2017, Johnson announced his retirement.
I love you. This was my last fight. I would never, ever forget you.
But the competitive fire never truly goes out for fighters, and Rumble couldn't stay away. He signed with Bellator and planned a comeback, but his return was derailed by an undisclosed illness that forced him to withdraw from the light heavyweight Grand Prix after just 1 fight. Johnson aimed for a return to the UFC in 2022, but his health continued to deteriorate. On November 13th of that year, Rumble passed away at just 38 years old. The cause was organ failure linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis, a rare immune system disorder that his body couldn't overcome. The MMA world lost not just a phenomenal fighter, but someone who brought excitement every time he stepped into the cage. Johnson's knockout power and warrior spirit left an indelible mark on the sport.
Rumble, thank you for the memories.
Johnson wasn't the only UFC legend lost in 2022. Another pioneer of the sport, someone whose single fight changed MMA forever, would also pass that year. Stephan Bonnar. Stephan Bonnar hung up his gloves in 2014 with a 15-9 professional record after 7 action-packed years in the UFC, where he went 8-7. But those numbers don't tell the real story of Bonnar's impact on mixed martial arts. Bonnar earned his UFC contract following his legendary battle against Forrest Griffin in the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 light heavyweight tournament final. Despite losing the fight, his performance was so outstanding that Dana White and Frank Fertitta decided to award him a 6-figure UFC contract anyway, an unprecedented move that set the stage for his career.
Frank, Lorenzo, and I have gotten together and we've decided there is no loser. And we're gonna offer Stephan Bonnar a 6-figure contract with the UFC.
That fight became iconic. Held at the Cox Pavilion in Las Vegas, the bout was so intense that 12 million people tuned in during just 6 minutes of the action.
Stephan Bonnar, Forrest Griffin come out. This fight was so small, it was at the Cox Pavilion in Las Vegas, right? During 6 minutes of that fight, 12 million people tuned in.
The arena erupted. Fans were stomping their feet so hard it sounded like a train running through the building. The fight was named 2005 Fight of the Year and was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame Fight Wing in 2013. That single bout is credited with popularizing MMA and putting the UFC on the map. As a testament to their storied rivalry and mutual respect, Bonnar even named his son Griffin after his opponent. In 2021, Bonnar found himself back in the spotlight for unfortunate reasons. He posted videos of a heated altercation with hospital staff and police in Las Vegas after becoming upset over the unavailability of pain medication. The confrontation drew police intervention and raised concerns about his well-being. A year later, the UFC legend passed away at the age of 45. While the UFC initially suggested heart complications might have been a factor, the Clark County Coroner's Office eventually confirmed that Bonnar's death was due to an accidental fentanyl overdose.
Thank you for paving the way for me. I was the first woman to win the Ultimate Fighter, and I would have never been given that opportunity if it wasn't for Stephan Bonnar and his fight with Forrest Griffin putting the UFC on the map. So thank you, Stephan Bonnar. Rest in paradise, and much love and prayers to your family.
People that, like, after he died, you post pictures of him in support and all this. Like, well, this man was losing his shit. Where were you? And I'm not saying you had to be there for him, but you weren't there for him then. Don't be there for him now, because now he doesn't need it.
His passing sparked discussions about supporting fighters after their careers end. Without Bonner and Griffin's epic battle, the UFC might not exist as we know it today. The sport owes him an enormous debt. Street fighting fame brought our next fighter into the spotlight, but health issues he ignored would ultimately take his life. Kimbo Slice, born Kevin Ferguson, became a household name through sheer force of personality and devastating knockout power. He originally gained fame through viral street fight videos that spread across the early internet.
Kimbo Slice is a guy who basically got famous off of YouTube fighting in people's backyard.
Those raw, unfiltered backyard brawls made him the first true viral fighting sensation. Slice transitioned to professional MMA and made waves with his aggressive, explosive style. His larger-than-life persona and highlight reel knockouts quickly captured the public's attention. He competed in Elite XC, Strikeforce, and eventually the UFC, with his popularity reaching unimaginable heights.
He was like the first viral thing in fighting when the whole internet started, you know what I mean? I mean, everybody was watching that.
Tons of views.
It was crazy.
Despite his tough guy image, people who knew Slice personally described him as smart, charming, and genuinely kind.
He was a good guy, man. I met that dude a couple times. Very nice guy.
He was a family man with 6 children who just wanted to provide for his loved ones. The backyard brawler persona was real, but it wasn't the complete picture. Unfortunately, Slice's life was cut short due to long-standing health issues that he continued to ignore. On June 6, 2016, he passed away at the age of 42 from heart failure. His death was attributed to complications from congestive heart failure, and an autopsy revealed a mass on his liver. Slice needed a heart transplant, but a donor never came. He was only 42 years old, far too young to die from a chronic heart condition that could have been managed with proper medical care.
Yeah, chronic heart condition, needed a heart transplant.
Slice's death serves as a reminder that fighters need to take their health seriously, even after their careers end. While Slice ignored warning signs about his health, our next fighter succumbed to an illness that came on suddenly and aggressively. Kevin Randleman. Kevin Randleman was a former UFC heavyweight champion and a true pioneer of the sport. The athletic wrestler competed in the UFC, Pride FC, and Strikeforce, battling some of the world's best fighters including Fedor Emelianenko and Mirko Cro Cop. In the UFC, Randleman won the heavyweight belt by defeating Pete Williams at UFC 23. His wrestling pedigree and explosive athleticism made him a force in the heavyweight division during an era when the sport was still finding its identity. On February 11, 2016, Randleman passed away from complications due to pneumonia, which led to heart failure. He was just 44 years old. The MMA legend had a history of health issues, including staph infections and organ failure, which may have contributed to his untimely death.
Like this happens, it's really upsetting.
It is. It is. He truly was a great guy. I mean, all my interactions with him where he's always laughing and smiling and hugging people.
Those who knew Randleman described him as genuinely joyful, always laughing, smiling, and hugging people.
There's a lot of wars and there's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. If everybody could just, give somebody next to you a hug or give somebody some good advice or just give somebody a compliment, maybe the world would be a better place. Just show love to the next person next to you. I love all of you guys. Happy Father's Day.
He had an infectious personality that made everyone around him feel welcomed. His death was a significant loss, not just to MMA, but to everyone who knew him personally. Pneumonia claimed Randleman's life, and tragically, it would take another promising fighter just a year earlier. Corey Hill. Corey Hill was a professional mixed martial artist known for his time in the UFC and as a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter Season 5. The lightweight stood out for his tall, lanky frame, an unusual build for the 155-pound division that gave him a unique reach advantage. Hill fought 3 times in the UFC in 2008 and became particularly well known after a Fight for the Troops event where he suffered a horrific broken leg. During a fight with Dale Hart, Hill attempted a leg kick that was checked by his opponent. The impact shattered his leg in a gruesome injury that was replayed countless times on highlight reels.
Fighting, we were tussling around in the octagon, and it wasn't until laying there, I'm on my back, I still don't really know, what it was. Then I looked up at the jumbo screen and, then it was like, oh, is that my leg? Is this really happening to me?
Hill returned to competition a year later and continued fighting in various promotions for several more years. On May 15, 2015, he passed away at the age of 36 due to complications from pneumonia. His wife Lauren confirmed his death, describing Corey as a loving husband, devoted father, and strong role model for their children.
But like Dana White said in the hospital, he says, yeah, you achieve world status, people are gonna recognize you, but not the way you want it.
As Dana White pointed out after Hill's leg injury, he achieved worldwide recognition, but not the way he wanted. Hill became known more for that injury than his actual fighting accomplishments. His death was mourned by the MMA community, which recognized him as a warrior who persevered through adversity.
In the fights tonight, we would like to honor a fallen fighter, former UFC and Fight Time Promotions mixed martial artist Corey Hill, who last fought in this cage in February, passed away a few weeks ago after a short illness.
Hill's death from illness was tragic, but our next fighter's passing exposed one of the sport's deadliest practices, one that continues to claim lives. Yang Jianbing. Weight cutting in MMA is brutal and desperately needs reform. Yang Jianbing's story is a stark reminder of this painful reality. Jianbing was a promising Chinese mixed martial artist with a 5-1 professional record. He was only 21 years old and had his entire career ahead of him. Leading up to his bout at One Championship 35 in the Philippines, Jianbing underwent an intense weight-cutting process that involved severe dehydration. The day before the fight, he began struggling with dehydration symptoms and was taken to a hospital for suspected heat stroke. Despite medical intervention, he couldn't recover. On December 12, 2015, Jianbing passed away from cardiopulmonary failure.
Cardiopulmonary failure due to a weight cut. Lou, just your initial thoughts when you heard the news. We never like to see this in sport.
It's very sad, and the thing for me is how many more people have to, pass away for the community to actually really take action. More people have actually died from cutting weight versus actually fighting in the cage.
Killed by the weight cut, not by any opponent. His death sparked serious discussions about athlete safety and the need for reform in weight-cutting practices. More fighters have died from cutting weight than from actually fighting in the cage, which exposes a fundamental problem with how the sport operates. One Championship responded by implementing immediate reforms, replacing strict weight-cutting requirements with hydration testing to prevent similar tragedies. Jianbing's death wasn't in vain. It forced the industry to confront a practice that had been ignored for too long. Weight cutting killed Jianbing behind the scenes. But our next fighter died in front of the world, in a boxing ring where he didn't belong. Tim Hague. Tim Hague was a Canadian heavyweight who competed in the UFC from 2009 to 2010. He made a memorable debut by submitting Pat Barry in the first round, showing real promise as a fighter. However, his UFC career had ups and downs, and he was eventually released from the promotion. Hague continued fighting in MMA until 2016, then made a decision that would prove fatal. He took up boxing. On June 16, 2017, Hague participated in a boxing match against Adam Braidwood in Edmonton, Alberta. During the fight, Hague was brutally knocked out and suffered severe brain injuries. He was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery, but the damage was too extensive. 2 days later, on June 18th, Hague passed away at the age of 34. His death sparked conversations about the safety of combat sports and the need for better regulations and medical protocols.
Me and Dewey Cooper, my trainer, were going crazy, it's not a game, this, even if a guy gets up and, everybody sees the knockout and everybody goes crazy and screams, but they don't see the guy laying on the floor, they don't see him when he gets up and he has to go home and talk to his wife, and, sometimes you're not the same man, that's very serious, and sometimes it's worse than death. Some guys go into severe depression off one punch, it's not even a career.
Knockouts aren't just entertainment, they represent severe trauma to the brain. Sometimes fighters get up and seem fine, but the cumulative damage can be devastating. As his trainer noted, sometimes the consequences are worse than death. Severe depression, personality changes, and cognitive decline that fighters carry for the rest of their lives. Hague's death serves as a reminder that combat sports must prioritize fighter safety above everything else. Proper medical screening, consistent protocols, and knowing when to stop a fighter from competing can mean the difference between life and death. Ryan Jimmo. Ryan Jimmo was a Canadian mixed martial artist who fought in the UFC's light heavyweight division from 2012 to 2015. He was known for his explosive power, charisma, and an absolutely devastating UFC debut. Jimmo knocked out Anthony Parash in just 7 seconds at UFC 149, one of the fastest knockouts in promotional history. A year after his final UFC bout, Jimmo's life was cut short in a senseless act of violence. On June 26, 2016, after a verbal altercation in a parking lot in Edmonton, Alberta, Jimmo was struck by a truck in a hit-and-run incident.
The victim of a fatal hit and run on White Avenue last night has been identified. Former MMA wrestler Ryan Jimmo is dead. His friends and fans commenting on social media, saying how much he will be missed. Jimmo, who went by the name The Big Deal, was 34.
The UFC veteran was taken to the hospital, but succumbed to his injuries. He was only 34 years old. The truck driver was later arrested and sentenced to 8 years in prison for manslaughter. Jimmo's death was particularly tragic because it was completely avoidable, a moment of road rage that escalated into murder. The MMA community mourned the loss of a fighter who brought excitement every time he competed. Jimmo's murder came from a random act of violence. Our next fighter's death resulted from a troubled life that caught up with him outside the cage. Michael Falcão. Michael Falcão was a Brazilian middleweight who boasted a record of 40 wins, 19 losses, and 1 no contest. He made his mark in the sport with an aggressive fighting style that made him exciting to watch. His UFC career was brief due to legal troubles back in Brazil, which led to his release from the promotion. Falcão continued his career in Bellator, where he won the Season 6 middleweight tournament. Unfortunately, his time in the spotlight was marred by further controversies, including a brawl at a gas station that led to his release from Bellator.
Mas acaba agredida no rosto. Michael Falcão está com também lutador Cauê Mena. Dentro da loja, os dois saem no soco com um grupo que protegia a jovem. A briga continua do lado de fora da conveniência, no pátio do posto, até que esse jovem de casaco vermelho pega um pedaço de pau e atinge os dois lutadores. Cauê Mena desmaia na hora e continua sendo agredido com chutes.
Falcão's troubled life outside the cage ultimately led to his death. On January 23, 2022, he was stabbed outside a bar in his hometown of Pelotas, Brazil. He was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Even after 2 years, the circumstances surrounding his death remain under investigation, and it's unclear if his attacker has been caught. Falcão's story is a tragic reminder that violence outside the cage can be just as deadly as anything inside it. Falcão's death came from street violence. Our next fighter was killed during what should have been a family celebration. Justin Eilers. Justin Eilers was a UFC heavyweight who fought from 2004 to 2005. He was known for his aggressive fighting style and knockout power, with notable fights against Paul Buentello and Andrei Arlovsky during his UFC tenure. 3 years after departing the UFC, Eilers' life took a tragic turn. On Christmas Day 2008, he was shot and killed during a domestic dispute at a family gathering in Nampa, Idaho. The shooter was James Robert Malik, the boyfriend of Eilers' mother. Eilers was pronounced dead at the scene. Malik, a former correctional officer, was later convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Eilers was only 30 years old when he died. What should have been a family celebration turned into a nightmare that ended his life over a petty argument. His death remains one of the most tragic stories in MMA history. Eilers died at a family gathering. Our next fighter was killed while simply crossing the street. A promising career ended by a drunk driver. Jordan Parsons. Jordan Parsons was a promising Bellator fighter with a professional record of 11-2. At just 25 years old, he was making a name for himself in the sport and had a bright future ahead of him. On the evening of April 30th, 2016, Parsons was struck by a silver SUV while crossing an intersection in Delray Beach, Florida. The impact was so severe that his leg had to be amputated in an effort to save his life. Unfortunately, Parsons succumbed to his injuries 4 days later on May 4th. The driver fled the scene but was arrested 3 days after Parsons' death. Dennis Wright, a 28-year-old from Boca Raton, was charged with leaving the scene of a crash causing death, tampering with evidence, and driving with a suspended license.
I can imagine how extremely difficult it is for all of you, including your friends, to not only suffer the loss of a great person, but your son, a brother, and friend. I take full responsibility for what happened and for the loss of life for.
Wright had attempted to have his damaged SUV repaired at a body shop, but the owner refused and contacted authorities. During sentencing, Wright took full responsibility for what happened, acknowledging that if he'd been driving with a proper license and at the speed limit, Parsons would still be alive.
I would say that today has probably been the most difficult day of my life, but the truth is it was that week, that Monday, that Wednesday night hearing that Mr. Parsons had passed away from an accident that was completely my fault. I know without a doubt that if I had been driving with a proper license, the speed limit, and sober, that Mr. Parsons would 100% be here today.
While Parsons' family acknowledged that justice had been served with Wright's prison sentence, they noted that no punishment could bring their son back.
Been served, so the whole team and everyone, the whole family's really happy.
He's sitting in prison, but my son is still dead. He gets to call his mom or get conversations with his mom. I don't get that, so I don't think it'll ever just be over.
In October 2016, it was revealed that Parsons had been diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, making him only the second MMA fighter publicly identified with CTE. His death highlighted multiple dangers fighters face, both inside and outside the cage. These fighters left us far too soon. Some died from illness, others from accidents, and some from senseless violence. Each loss serves as a reminder that life is fragile, even for the toughest athletes on the planet. Their legacies live on through the fights they gave us and the impact they made on the sport. Which of these stories impacted you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more MMA content that goes beyond the headlines.